Sure. Hey, welcome to me, I guess. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here. I'm joined by two great comrades from SFUSD, Chris Armentrout and Bajay Tiara, who are in the back. Hello to them. I am so excited to share our work with you. In June 2015, our local school board adopted a resolution that said every child in the school district would learn computer science. And it's a deep commitment. We expect to teach students every year. I'm getting a signal.
Ignore them.
Okay. Check. We expect to teach every student every year from pre-K to 8, and they're going to have a significant experience with computer science. So it is ongoing experience with, not just exposure to computer science. And we believe that by starting with every child in the earliest grades, that we will normalize a discipline that's been long dominated by a small subset of the population. And so it will just become part of the core curriculum. So students will learn it every year. In our plan right now at the high school level, we have elective opportunities. So students after 8th grade, when it is the students will learn it every year, they will elect to continue studying in high school. We also expect to have multiple points of integration within other subjects as the familiarity among both students and teachers becomes stronger.
Well, and Next Generation Science Standards provides an excellent opportunity for that, given that 3 out of the 8 practices in that are related to computer science.
It does, and we have that new great state framework that ties in computational thinking into NGSS.
Adopted just this month.
Yeah, so I actually think that much of what San Francisco Unified is doing is actually similar to what we're doing in Oakland Unified, so I'm going to try to highlight the differences. So we don't have a board resolution, and we've been staving it off. Actually, pre-election, I didn't want it to be used as a ploy, you know. So we really looked at 9th grade, and we were like, okay, how can we get all of our 9th graders in Oakland Unified to take computer science? We got 1,700 of the 2,200 students in Oakland Unified in 9th grade taking ECS, so thank you, Jane. We're also looking at middle school, and so middle school is developing a program 6 through 8. We have 360 kids in APCS, up from 33 last year, APCS principals. And then we're utilizing partnerships with Code.org. We're utilizing partnerships with Intel and Salesforce. Tons of industry involvement, and that's really what we're looking at, trying to get more 10 through 12th graders into industry internships. I would say otherwise, though, we're pretty partnered as far as things are rolling out.
And I want to ask Rebecca, how is the county Office of Ed responding? Are you seeing a lot of increased interest among districts, and what are you doing to be able to respond to that interest?
Well, I know one of the misconceptions shared was that we should just spread what's happening, but I do have to say I want to do at least that because it's really wonderful to be sitting between you guys and hearing about the amazing things happening. I think in a place like San Mateo County where there are 23 districts and there are districts as small as a couple hundred students and then larger ones, there is a huge range of response to computer science, but I would venture to guess in my conversations in my role in the STEM position that there is no superintendent or district officer or even school leader that isn't thinking about computer science and holding it in their mind as something critical and vital, but really feeling that urgency, but really struggling with where to go from there. And so I do think hearing stories is sometimes what starts the conversation, and I think there are other things that can be done as well, but I'm very happy about the framework because I think that will be a great organizing entity to help us also start that conversation.
Well, let me follow up with that with you three before I go to John and just ask about the framework. To what extent, especially for Brian and Claire, to what extent do you feel comfortable that what you're doing so far and what you've implemented so far aligns with the framework or doesn't align with the framework? And oh, by the way, audience, Brian was one of the framework writers, and so he knows quite a bit about it in depth. But I'm curious, do you think it aligns? Do you feel comfortable with that?
Which is why I'm going to sneak in first, because Brian is way more of an expert on this. So I would say that in Oakland Unified, we really went for scale as opposed to deeply looking at every course offering. And some of you might cringe on that, but one of the things we wanted to do was ensure that there was a presence in the maximum number of schools possible. And so we're offering redundant courses, and some people are questioning the strategy. But what we're basically doing is saying, okay, so here's the standard, right? And this is a 6th grade understanding, a 7th grade understanding, an 8th grade, a 9th grade. And it's given us a lot of opportunity to really use ourselves as a lab. And I have a really incredible middle school coordinator who's looking at this and helping teachers understand. But I would say that having the framework is going to allow us to be, I guess, more thoughtful and intentional about our course offerings moving forward. But definitely, in speaking to the differences, I think we were more aggressive about scale, which gets to your equity point. I did fail to mention this. If a school said, hey, I want to offer a computer science class, I have this group of 8th grade students who are in geometry and they don't have an elective, that school did not get a teacher. That was not what we were looking for. We were either looking at grade levels who would offer it to every student so that we knew that the classes would automatically be gender balanced, schools that were offering it to their special populations, or Oakland actually has a significant newcomer population. So 1 in 7 students in Oakland Unified at the high school level is a newcomer. And so we have newcomers both integrated in our computer science classes and special sections for just newcomers. And so we were really transparent from the start. This isn't an elective for students who already have access. This is either universal or you're not getting it.
Brian.
When we were first created a plan for expanding computer science, we created a scope and sequence that attempted to delineate the knowledge and skills that we wanted students to gain as they progressed through the different years. And so we use that as the kind of the first attempt at laying out what we wanted students to learn to develop coursework. I think the framework is like that on steroids. So I think it's the much better fleshed out version of what our scope and sequence like intended to do. And so I think the aim of that is to provide these learning progressions of what are the outcomes at targeted grade bands that students should achieve if we are successful in implementing. So I think it's quite helpful to know what is our like high level vision for what we want to achieve. The tricky part is right now as we implement, we're kind of teaching the introductory level at every level. And that's really tricky because that only works for a year. And then you're teaching second level to every level, except for the very first level. And so you play this game of balancing for quite a bit of time. And that's no easy game to play. So like curriculum development will change dramatically over the next 10, 15, 20 years and beyond. So I say we're using it as we're using it to develop courses. And we also know that we have to flex when students don't yet have the number of years of experience that they will one day have.
Right. Yes. What you've done is this is proof of concept that I have, thinking that I have about computer science. As I've been the lead on this for 2.5 years for the board, is that it's too new a field, it's too fast, too quickly evolving, and that's not expected to slow down anytime soon. And so taking different approaches and sort of keeping the vision in mind, but staying flexible about how it gets implemented so that you evolve and learn from experience.
And I think what the magic that will happen is that if we can say that our 8th graders are going to have this foundational skill set, then that means in high school that any teacher can say, oh, well, I'm going to integrate computer science into my content area because I know that students have this foundation and I don't have to teach the basics and I can just jump right in. And I think that's what affords us. So students can come from different schools, different experiences, but at the same the same levels ish, then teachers can build on that and expect that.
And if I can just ask Rebecca real quickly, do you think the existence of the framework will be seen as a tool by more districts in the county as oh wait, great, we've been wondering what we were supposed to teach, what the practices and concepts were, and that might be motivating?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the same is true, what you mentioned about students and having different opportunities and being flexible, the same is true for all the different players in the system. So the teachers and the school leaders and the district leaders, there needs to be multiple pathways. And what I like about the framework is there's a tremendous amount of content that might speak to and support learning for a lot of different kinds of people. And I think there's a lot of doorways in there. There are wonderful opportunities to engage in the equity conversation. I know many of our districts are really focusing on that now, and where better to start than computer science, and especially because it is kind of starting from scratch, and there's a lot of opportunity there. But there are also the concepts and practices, and we have many districts working on concepts and practices in ELA and mathematics, and thinking about now next generation science standards. So this is the perfect moment to also think about learning in computer science through those lenses. So I think the framework is going to be a great initiator of conversations in multiple different pathways.
Excellent. Let me give John a chance. He has done some really exciting work up in Mill Valley. And if you could tell us how you got started with that work and what it's evolving into.
Yeah, so we're a 501c3 up in Marin County, and we partner with schools to try and engage parents in K-5 computer science learning. We've taken a little bit of a different path than more top-down models where people are trying to build, curriculum resources or teacher training to push computer science in programmatic ways. We're a little more grassroots-oriented, but we believe what we've come upon is actually applicable to any elementary school in the country. When the Hour of Code first came out a few years back, we kind of innocently put together an evening program. We thought, Hour of Code is great. Let's do it as an evening K-5 event for parents and kids together. Why not? Give it a shot. The response, we suddenly realized we had a tiger by the tail. At a very small elementary school in Mill Valley, 140 people turned out with about 11 days' notice. Everyone worked in two-person teams in the room, and the experience in the room was absolutely extraordinary. A mom and her third grader doing their first hour of coding together, and both of them having this sort of wide-eyed realization, along with all the fun of the Angry Birds and the pigs and all the wonderful code.org material. We use the original maze as the stuff. Anyway, the energy in the room and the realizations in the room were really groundbreaking, where the kids realized, my God, this is really fun. I can code. And the parents realizing, oh my God, this is fun. My kid can code. Really remarkable. We did surveys from that first family code night. 100% of the surveys asked for follow-up programs. So suddenly, we got drawn into the business of offering after-school enrichment classes. Long story short, that then spread to 15 schools all across Marin County. And it was interesting because there were two things about it that I think were special. One was family engagement. At the K-5 level, there's a magic in family engagement that I think has been underappreciated in the National CS for All movement. In the hundreds of millions of dollars spent on curriculum development and teacher training, very little has been invested in engaging families at the very moment in K-5 where they have the most influence. A parent's direct participation in the learning, a parent's approval of what that child is doing, has a magic effect on the child and has a tremendous effect in the school community. And we have a room of 200 people from one elementary school all having this experience. The mobilization of that school community is pretty extraordinary too. And one other issue about this that we think is really important, starting in K-5 is really important on all of the equity issues because we now have offered these classes for the last few years, and of the 2,000 kids who have taken our after-school classes, we've researched the gender gap in signups for those classes. And it's kind of a nice little data sample because these are self-selecting kids taking optional classes. In kindergarten, our breakdown is almost 50-50. By fifth grade, it's 80-20. And so we think that from a gender point of view and from probably applies the same to kids in less advanced, lower income districts, by middle school, a lot of kids have sort of decided if this is for them or not. It's like, I'm not good at math. I'm not good at science. I'm not good at computer science. Well, we think there's no reason for them to come to that conclusion when there's wonderful stuff like code.org, and we're in this golden age of free online curriculum. So we really believe that family engagement around computer science learning in K-5 is a magic element that any elementary school can implement right now, and we're now scaling what we've done in Marin County to try and offer some of the best of that to any school.
So I can't help but add to that as a state board member, those of you that are district leaders out there that have to put together now a local control accountability plan and update it every year, And part of the core tenets of that is engagement, getting ideas from your teachers, from your community stakeholders, from industry, and from parents. This would be a wonderful way to get interest among parents and to test that interest and to help you decide whether or not how fast you want to move. Let me say, not whether you're going to bring computer science into your school and district, but how fast you're going to move on it. So,
If I could just flesh that out just a little bit, we've built a model called community-powered learning. We call it's not an original name, I'm sure, but every one of our classes is taught by a professional lead instructor. The rest of the teaching team is parents, high school kids, middle school kids, people from the community. And the nice thing about K-5, you don't need Ruby on Rails programmers to teach the maze, right? So the community-powered learning model can work in almost any school, and it's a really wonderful thing because everybody in the room has got a dog